Everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Machinery Time with Mark. I'm Mark. Today I am in my office here. A little bit of my dealer display in the background. Today I thought we would tell the story of Moline Plow Company. I know last time we did Moline Wagon, so I kind of thought we'd just kind of keep going with the Moline theme here. Um, so I guess with that, let's just get started. Talk to you later. In 1850, Alonzo Norris and two partners, Henry Candy and Robert Swan, started an ag machinery warehouse on Main and Wells Street in Moline. They sold Eastern-made U.S. farm implements like fanning mills, hay rakes, plows, buggies, and all kinds of different farm implements needed at the time in the area. This map kind of shows the area, I believe, where the warehouse was at. It is between Main and Wells Street in Moline, and that's kind of what I have circled. 4 years later, Candy and Swan purchased the machinery warehouse and they called it Moline Plow. About that same time, there was a foreman at Deere & Company, a Swedish immigrant named Andrew Freeberg. Mr. Freeberg moved up the ladder quickly with his new ideas and patents on his new plow improvements. I don't have any pictures of Mr. Freeberg, but this is about as close as I could come, so this was his tombstone. In 1864, Mr. Freeberg moved to the Rocky Mountains because he was having lung issues. Let's say Deere lost a very good leader, thinker, with Mr. Freeberg leaving. Well, oddly enough, 1 year later, Mr. Freiberg returned to Moline to work for Moline Plow Company because Moline Plow Company wanted to start building their own plows to compete with Deere and other brands. Freiberg came out with a Moline-built plow that sold well. Deere was furious when they heard he was back and building plows for Moline Plow Company. Also, Deere was upset with Moline Plow Company for using the name Moline in their name. Deere and Moline Plow went to court. After a 3-year battle, Moline Plow won and was able to use the name Moline as their name and logo. Let's just say with that outcome, Deere was not very happy, and things between the two companies were even strained even more. About this time, Norris, Candy, and Swan sold their ownership of the company to George Stevens and Stillman Wheelock. George Stevens owned a successful sawmill 30 miles outside of Moline. The U.S. government purchased the land and the sawmill, so Stevens had some cash to invest. In 1851, Stillman Wheelock came to Moline after working in the paper mill industry in the East. He wanted to have his own company along the Mississippi River where lumber was still abundant. Over time and a lot of work, it became one of the largest paper mills in the country. With his fortune, he was able to put down $75,000 into part ownership of Moline Plow Company. He was also president of Moline National Bank and was purchasing large plots of land south of Moline, eventually building a huge home and large horse barns. The great businessmen that they both were, they decided to incorporate the company in 1870, and it officially became Moline Plow Company. From 1870 to 1880, business boomed for Moline Plow Company. They became one of the large competitors for Deere, not only with sales of equipment, but in the need of skilled labor in the Moline area. In 1884, Moline Plow Company came out with the Flying Dutchman sulky plow. The plow had 3 wheels, making it very maneuverable to plow with. This plow also was sold by International Harvester at the time. In 1886, the Moline Champion planter was introduced. It was the first gear-dropping planter. That means it was able to drop one seed at a time in a controlled manner, something we take granted for today. Moline Plow Company just kept growing. They started purchasing smaller companies so they could start producing more products to sell all over the U.S. In 1903, they purchased the Mant Wagon Company in Wisconsin. 1906, Monitor Drill Company in Minnesota. 1911, they became partners with Acme Steel Company in Chicago. 1913, Adriance Platt and Company in New York. And they also purchased the Henny Buggy Company in Freeport, Illinois. During this time, Moline Plow had 14 branch houses all over the country. They also had over 2,000 employees and several factories, and over 200 traveling salesmen selling to independent dealers all over the U.S. Now here is what the Moline Plow Company factory looks like today. Today we're here in downtown Moline. Trying to speak up because I know it's a little loud with the traffic. So this is the John Deere Pavilion. This land, obviously not the buildings, but the land belonged to Moline Plow. And Moline Plow, I'll show you in the map, had a building here, and then here in Deere's industrial headquarters building. And it went down there to the parking garage a little bit, but the base of it was over here at the Wyndham. Well, it's a Wyndham now. Originally it was a Radisson, but this is where Moline Plow was. So if some of you have been here in the Quad Cities, you probably stayed in this hotel, didn't even know it. But Moline Plow was here. I'll show you a little bit. The Mississippi River is right over there on the other side of that part of this building. So it was all right in here. And then down here a little bit further. So right here is where Deere's Plow Works was, plow factory. Goes down, it would have gone down the street, but right in here, I'll show you on the map, is where Moline Plow, which was where the Radisson, or the whatever its name is, and the hotel, and Deere and Moline Plow shared literally a wall between each other, an office building wall, and I'll show you that. But this is the land where Moline Plow was. It goes on down the street. Not quite as far down. Now the next big thing down here on the side of the parking lot is Deere Plow Planter, or seeding now they call it. And that's where the Moline wagon was. And then next to it would have been Veely, which I think I showed you on the last video. So this is where Moline Plow was, next to John Deere. So a lot of people think this was just John Deere, but you know, in the story I'm telling you, Moline Plow turns into Minneapolis Moline, and once Minneapolis Moline left town, Deere gobbled up all the rest of the factory, which made sense because it was literally sharing a wall, and gave Deere the expansion room that they needed for seeding, plow planter. So yeah, this is where it was at. So I hope you can hear it. I'm sorry I forgot my clip-on microphone, but hopefully you can hear me. So with that, go back. Here's the pictures I promised you. They are a little bit newer. The buildings do say Minneapolis Moline, but these are the buildings where Moline Plow was. You can see, I tried to label them. You can see that literally they shared a wall between each other. If you look at the old Deere headquarters, right next door is Minneapolis Moline. And then, like I showed you across the street where the commons are now, that is also Minneapolis Moline. In 1902, George Stevens passed away in his mansion in Moline. His son, George Arthur Stevens, became president of the company. So now with George Arthur and Wheeling still running the company, by 1910, stationary engines were becoming more popular on farms to run threshers and other things on the farm. So Moline Plow commissioned Alamo Machinery Company in Hillsdale, Michigan, to build stationary engines for them called the Flying Dutchman. The engine became very popular and sold very well. By 1914, with World War I raging in Europe, there was a great uprising about anything German in the U.S., so the Flying Dutchman logo and name was dropped from our marketing. Like other farm equipment manufacturers at the time, Moline Plow noticed the increase of tractors on farms replacing the horse. So they commissioned International Harvester to build a couple tractors for Moline Plow with Moline Plow's design. The tractor in this picture is a 1914 International Harvester. This is not the tractor that they built for Moline Plow. I could not find any pictures of that. The tractor was not a success, and they decided not to produce it. A company called Universal Tractor Company in Columbus, Ohio was building a 2-cylinder, 10-horsepower motor cultivator tractor. Moline Plow knew about the company because Universal was purchasing the cultivators and plows that mounted on the tractors from Moline Plow. In 1915, with some success with the Universal Tractor sales, Moline Plow purchased Universal Tractor Company for $150,000. Moline Plow continued building the same Universal Tractor for 2 more years. In 1917, they felt that the Universal Tractor needed more horsepower, so they commissioned Root Vandervoort, a company in East Moline, Illinois, to build a 4-cylinder engine for the new Universal Tractor. Now with the larger engine, they hoped the tractor would be a success. They also added an electric governor, electric start, and lights, which was almost unheard of at the time. The only drawback of the new tractor was that it had a short wheelbase and high center of gravity, so they were dangerous in hilly fields. So sales fell off, and the tractor was discontinued in 1923. And the tractor factory was sold to International Harvester. Moline Plow sold the East Moline factory to International Harvester for $90,000 in November 24th, 1926, a total of 83 acres. By this time, I think Mr. Wheelock could see the writing on the wall, and he eventually sold 51% of his that he owned of the company to Willys Overland Company in 1918. So that meant Willys had controlling interest of the company, having 51%. So young George Stevens eventually sold some of his ownership to Willys in 1919, so Willys had 82% of the company. But unfortunately for Willys, sales plummeted. So Willys tried to restructure the company in 1922 and 1923 and changed the name to Moline Implement Company. Willys Overland found out in the restructuring that purchasing Moline Plow Company at this time was a bad idea. Moline Plow had overextended itself in purchases during World War I, building new, larger factories and updating older ones. Also, they had a large financial loss with sales in Russia because at that time there was an overthrow in the Russian government and the new regime was not going to pay the bills of the old regime. Willys tried to keep the company alive, so they started building a line of trucks, 1.5-ton trucks. But the only problem was, so was everyone else. A lot of companies were building trucks back then, along with cars, and they just could not compete. Since we're talking about automobiles and trucks, remember George Arthur Stevens, the son of George Stevens Sr.? He kept the Freeport, Illinois buggy factory and started building automobiles there in 1917. They ended up building 1,300 cars. The car was well built and sold for a good price, but unfortunately, most every major city in the U.S. had an automobile factory, including Moline. The Stevens Automobile Factory closed in 1923. In 1925, Willys tried something else. They changed the name from Moline Plow Company to Moline Implement Company, trying to show the world that they were a modern company that sold more than just plows. Well, by 1929, Willys just couldn't do it anymore and sold off the company to Minneapolis Steel and Minneapolis Threshing Company, this ending ownership with Willys and Stevens. The new company was called Minneapolis Moline Power Company. With this change, Moline was no longer the company's headquarters, and everything was based out of Minneapolis, and it was a Minneapolis-run company now. They closed all the other factories and consolidated everything to Minneapolis and Moline. Like a lot of farm implement companies, after World War II, the companies really blossomed and sold a lot of equipment. The changing of the equipment, making it more general purpose, tractors were more available on farms, and it was just something you just saw everywhere. But yet again, in 1951, Minneapolis Moline was sold to B.F. Avery and Sons. And yet again, in the 1960s, Minneapolis Moline reorganized under the name Motec. So Minneapolis Moline became subsidiary of Motec. But then again, in 1963, White Motor Company purchased Minneapolis Moline. I did forget to mention that in the late 1950s, Minneapolis Moline moved out of Moline, and Deere & Company purchased the remaining property. Just a little reminder here that I'm trying to give you the best that I can look up and find information about these companies. I am not an expert on Moline Plow, Moline Wagon, any of these companies. I'm just trying to give you the best that I can, the information that I have available. And please look more of this stuff up for yourself. Keep going with it. I do plan on doing a extended version of the Minneapolis Moline, and later on probably doing one on George Stevens and Stillman Wheelock. A lot of history with those two here in the Quad Cities other than just Moline Plow. Some really cool properties that they owned and parks that have been named after them that I'd like to share with you. One other thing I forgot to mention, in the early 20s, Moline Plow Company had a football team called the Moline Universal Tractors, and they played a football game in Rock Island, Illinois, with the Rock Island Independents. The Independents were one of the very first teams that belonged to the American Professional Football Association, now is known as the NFL. The Universal Tractors lost that game, but they did end up playing another game against a NFL team. It was the Decatur Stanleys, and they also lost that game, but the Stanleys were a NFL team. But what's interesting about it is the Decatur Stanleys ended up becoming the Chicago Bears. So it would be interesting to find out what would have happened if the Moline Universals would have beaten the Decatur Stanleys. Obviously, we will never know. In 2022, Moline, they redid the game against the Rock Island Independents and the Moline Universal Tractor Company. And Moline still lost, but at least they got to replay the game, and it was really kind of known as one of the first NFL games ever, and played in Moline. I found this very interesting, and I hope you guys did too. Yeah, one more thing. Hey, please like and subscribe and comment below. Hey, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the video about Moline Plow Company. I know I learned a lot digging up the information, and I hope you guys did too. It was very interesting. I'm going to be doing a whole video coming up on Minneapolis Moline. That's kind of where we left off on this video. This one ended up being a lot longer, a lot more information than I expected. And I've looked into Minneapolis Moline, and it gets pretty deep also. So we'll go on to another one with that. We've got the Rantoul tractor show coming up. going to be going to that. Looking forward to that. Hope we got good weather. It's been heating up here a little bit lately in this area, but we'll see how it goes. I guess with that, that's about it. I don't know if you've been noticing the last couple videos, I've been wearing different John Deere dealer hats. If you'd like to have your hat in the video, you can send it to me and I'd gladly wear it. I love visiting different dealers when we travel. My wife will tell you that. And make a lot of good friends. And I've made some friends with this dealer here. Good people, very good people. So with that, please always remember when you're down, and the best thing that you can do in life is always let the sun shine in your heart and the brain will follow. So with that, we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.